Welcome to the Cribl Global User Group meeting for April, the fourth month, which should have been last week, but things happen. Did everybody go? Who went and saw the eclipse? Show of hands. Cool. You can either just raise your hand or turn your video on, or you can click the little button somewhere. There's a button to do things like that. Either way, just know in your head if you went or not. It was really cool. It's the second one. They might see the first one a couple of, what was it, in 2016, 2018, 2016, I think it was. We happened to accidentally be in the right place in almost in Jacksonville, no, Jacksonburg, I don't know, somewhere down in Missouri. Coming back from another trip. And I'm like, ooh, if we left like one day early, we could just stop by in the path of totality. And we did, and it was great. So drove 2,000 miles in 3 days for it. Nice. Yeah, I went down. I've got relatives all over in the path of totality near Cincinnati. So I just drove the 10 hours to there and back.
You know what I did was I just kind of posted up in Oklahoma City because the weather was really wild, unpredictable along the path of totality. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna wake up that morning, find the best forecast, and drive there.
And where was that at then?
That was Russellville, Arkansas.
Okay.
This is where I ended up seeing it. Yeah.
We were very worried about our weather too, but it turns out we actually ended up with great weather. But even 50 or 100 miles southeast of us or southwest of us, down across the southern part of Cincinnati, we could see clouds, like just a bank of them. And we just hoped they stayed down there. And they did. So we were good. Yeah, partial eclipses are cool, especially if you're in at least 75% totality. But oh man, the difference between even 99% and 100% is huge. Ooh, nice.
Breathtaking.
Did you take that?
Those
Yes.
are very cool.
Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, none of mine really turned out well. I even wore I actually had my NASA shirt on that had a glow in the dark big NASA on it. And both me, my sister, my brother-in-law, and everybody else in there totally forgot to even look. We were all busy looking up, And I'm like, all right, that's fine.
So I was just awe-stricken for the first minute of it. And I was fortunate enough to be in the 4-minute zone. And then I'm like, shit, I have a camera. Okay, so picture. So I took pictures for about the next minute and a half or so. And then I put it back down and just enjoyed the rest of the show.
Yeah, right. Yeah, don't get glued behind your phone in those kinds of cases. But if you can get a couple of good pictures, do so, Yeah, that's the best way. We were 2.5 minutes or something. I don't know. It's plenty long, really.
Yeah.
Oh, neat. Look at that. That's cool.
Very cool.
Nice picture, John.
Thanks.
All right.
It was in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Cool.
We were
Is that
97%.
in the path and you were just missing or just outside the path?
97%.
Oh, so close.
It went over Erie and Cleveland.
Yeah. Well, I know we don't have any more good ones that are broadly available for a long time now. Although there's a few that start or end or, are around and several annulars, I think. Anyhow, we should probably do Cribl, talk about Cribl stuff. So I think I'd already mentioned asking who might be going to CriblCon this year. So I just want to make a plug for that. If you haven't registered, you should do so. And then I guess, I don't know, do we have any other real news to talk about? I don't think so. Chris, anything?
No, just what our presenters are going to tell us about today, which is some pretty awesome news.
Perfect. I guess then with no further ado, we will hand this over to Rick and Felicia, and you two can take control and do what you need to do. I am going to go mute. I got to go talk with a man down in the garage for a little while. So I will be mute, but hopefully I'll come back before you guys get done. How long do you think you're going to take? Is this like a 15-minute thing or about a half hour or what?
It'll be as
all day. All day if you let us.
You keep a man in your garage. Should we be concerned?
No. He can come and go as he pleases, but he's setting up my electric car charger. Finally, 2 months I've been waiting on somebody. So he's just about done. So I got to go hook it up to my phone and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, so I'm going to run off and do that and check in on him. If he's not anywhere close, I'll be back. Otherwise, I have to hang out there for the next little while and sort some things out. So, which means, can you handle swag if I'm not back?
I sure can.
Thank you so much. All right, then. Off you guys go. Have a good talk, and I will catch the replay. There, hands in the air.
Thanks,
All right, let me
Rich.
make sure you guys
Awesome.
can take control and display and everything right first.
Extra plug for CriblCon. I
Yeah.
luckily get to work with one of our customer sessions. I saw his outline. It's a great story about their SIM migration. And then I sit on a call with Rick with another customer, and they're literally having the same problem. So, you know, you're not alone out there. You want to hear about how people are using Cribl to solve problems. Definitely check out the session at CriblCon. I'm just like, wait, I've heard this story before. And, all right, so I've got slides, but this can be as formal or as informal as everyone wants it to be. Sorry, let me get this in presenter view. All right, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Rich, for having me and Rick. We are really excited to finally tell the world about Cribl Lake. Tomorrow is the big day. It is being publicly announced finally and generally available. So you all are pretty much some of the first people to hear about it and also get a demo. And I do have a few slides prepared, just to introduce you to Cribl Lake, why it was built, who it's for, how it works, what benefits we're hoping our customers can get out of it. And then I'm going to hand it over to Rick for a demo. But again, as formal or informal as you all want it to be, jump in with your questions, jump into the chat. Seems like a fun group. Don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'm going to kind of zoom through. But want to kick this off with a question first. Where are you currently in your data lake journey? Are you already smooth sailing with a fully implemented strategy? Are you just dipping your toes, getting them wet? Got something already partially implemented? Are you charting your course? Have plans for the next year? Or are you like this goat in my AI generated photo? You're just chilling on the data dock, no plans yet, kind of, you know, doing your exploration of what's out there, what your options are. Feel free in the chat, just type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know. But curious to kind of hear from everybody where they're all at in their journey. All right. See some 3s, some 2s, some 4s, 3, 4. All right. So this is great. So very helpful information. Hopefully that at the end of hearing about Cribl Lake, you feel a little bit better about, I guess, next steps in your journey, whether it's with Cribl Lake, whether it's another lake that you're hoping to implement, maybe use Cribl Lake for integrations with Cribl. Honestly, you get to decide. All right. So just to start off with, I guess, the why we built Cribl Lake, there's a lot of customers has been coming to us about, you know, their challenges with where they're storing data. And the very, very, very hard thing with data is the formatting of it. And it takes a lot of cycles to really get the format that you need just to store it. And then don't even get me started on trying to format it, to get it out, to define the schemas, to where it needs to go in your downstream tools. And a lot of, you know, really sophisticated platforms out there like Snowflake really need you to go through this ETL process, extract, transform, load. And that's really, really hard. It's so painful to do. There's companies that have been built with their entire business model is to make that ETL process a little bit easier. Again, the Databricks, the Snowflakes of the world, they're very sophisticated platforms. They require teams of data engineers, data scientists to really just get them set up, to get them up and running, to maintain them, to work with the data, build the pipelines. And a lot of organizations, they just don't have the resources, this ability to hire, or the time or energy to invest in one of these data warehouses or data lakes. So a really great alternative are these cloud provided object stores, the S3 buckets, Cribl. The problem here is that we're hearing from our customers is that they're owned by the cloud team. So the IT ops, the SecOps teams, it's really hard for them to get the data that is stored in the S3 buckets. They have to file a ticket. They're waiting weeks or months just to get access. And part of the reason why it's so hard is because of the security and the access controls around setting up the individual buckets. It's really hard to do so. And I think the cloud team, they kind of want to make sure that, you know, they're not giving access to the wrong people. And I remember one of the first times I met with Rick, he was telling me the story of a data swamp and how it's very easy for data lakes to become this data swamp, which is like this dumping ground of data. And kind of where data goes to die. They can get data in, but when it comes to getting data out to work with, to get it to the teams and the tools that need it, that is very, very hard to do. And it's only when there's like a huge escalation, a security problem, hack, threat, then it's kind of like a whole all hands on deck situation where they go into where their data is stored and they all get that data out and they run the investigations. But if you're a DevOps team trying to just improve their app or just want the insights to provide a better experience, then getting the data that you need is a little bit harder. Lastly, integrating it to the downstream systems and tools that you want the data to go to, not easy, because again, data swamp, data gets stuck in there, and it's really frustrating. And so that's pretty much the reason why we decided to build a data lake here at Cribl. We just really wanted to make it simple for our IT and security teams, a place that they can just store, manage, and access their data. I really want to emphasize the and access part, because that's kind of what sets Cribl apart from all the other solutions out there. So Cribl Lake is available as a Cribl hosted managed storage. So you can have Cribl manage it all for you, or coming this summer, bring your own storage solution for S3, and then later on this year, Azure. So if you want to keep data where you keep your data, but still use Cribl Lake with integrations, you have that option. We like to provide choice here. Let's see, it's fully integrated with the data engine. So you don't need to manage separate systems for data ingestion, storage, search, and routing. It's all within Cribl. And this is available on Cribl Cloud. So Wednesday, you log into your Cribl Cloud platform, you'll see a brand new tile for Cribl Lake, and you can easily just start using it immediately. There's no new purchase necessary. It just draws down from your existing pool of Cribl credits. Let's see, next slide. So visually, this is how I like to explain how Cribl Lake works. I'm on the marketing team. I don't have a technical background. I had to learn myself how Cribl Lake actually works. And I was tasked with, figuring out an architectural diagram to show how easy it is. And, before this, what became this, pretty visual that our design team put together, I had to take pen to paper and figure out how it works, draw it out. And then I made my husband, I put my husband aside. He's much nerdier than I am. And I was like, okay, I need him to be able to see a visual and understand how it works. So the first thing I did was, you see that bottom row of logos, I drew that out for him. I said, S3, Cribl Managed Storage, Azure Blob, Google, Oracle. When you see Cribl Lake, with these logos, do you get that what we're offering is pretty much some cloud object storage? And he says, yeah, okay, I get that. I've used S3 buckets before, so it's a Cribl's offering storage. And okay, great. Then I drew this big rectangle above it and drew lines from the different logos, and I wrote Cribl Lake in that rectangle. And I said, okay, so Cribl Lake is pretty much, this abstraction layer. You can use Cribl storage. You don't have to. You can keep data stored where you have it, but you can still use Cribl Lake as this unified platform for integrations with the other Cribl products. And he said, okay, yeah, I understand how an abstraction layer works. And he asked, what are the products? What are the integrations? And then I drew a few circles above the rectangle. I wrote edge, I wrote stream, and a few, data sources. I said, well, data is ingested through edge and stream, and it's stored in open formats in Cribl Lake. And then you can use edge and stream to route the data out to the destinations that it needs to go to. You can use the replay feature in stream as well. And he said, okay, cool. And then I drew search. It was actually below it in V1, and I drew a huge circle around the whole thing and said, okay, and then with search, you can basically search data that's stored in S3, search across the data lakes, really unify that query experience no matter where data is stored. You don't have to move that data out. to a sim or analysis tool, you could just search right here. And that was when he kind of had this like, holy shit moment. And when he looked at it, he took a step back and was like, damn, Cribl is so smart for building a data lake. It totally makes sense, just one unified platform. You don't have to, your data doesn't have to take a detour out. You don't have to, manage data in individual buckets or blob storage. Like it's all right here. And so that's kind of a gist of how Cribl Lake works. And tomorrow, basically what we're going to tell the market, the why Cribl Lake, the what benefits it brings to our customers, really break it down into these three, I guess, benefit pillars. The speed, ease, and choice of it all. And speed is just being able to get up and running fast. You go into Cribl Cloud, and with just a few clicks, you can spin up a fully usable cloud data lake and deploy a data lake without depending on any other team to get the data that you need to work with. Ease, easy data in, easy data out, avoid that swamp. Because not all data is created equal. Data comes in all shapes and sizes, and a lot of data lakes out there require data to be in a specific format before it could be stored. So there's a lot of upfront work to make sure that data is transformed into the correct format. But Cribl Lake is different because it welcomes all open formats, unstructured, semi-structured, structured. Cribl Lake does not care. Schema I need means you only need to define the schema when you actually need the data to be replayed to fit into those downstream tools or use cases. We also offer unified policy, retention, security, and access controls. So it's a lot easier than, say, AWS or Azure on the security end of things. And lastly, your choice. As with all Cribl products, we want to complement existing stacks and give customers choice so they can decide whether to store with Cribl or use their own storage. It doesn't really matter. No vendor lock-in ever. We are here to just complement and optimize whatever and wherever you are in your storage strategy. And so I'm going to pause right there and ask another question. For those hanging out in a lake currently, what solution are you currently using? Are you using the cloud object storage, S3, Azure? Are you in data warehouses, Snowflake, Data Lakehouse, Databricks, or something more solution specific like Amazon Security Lake, SIMS? All right, I see a lot of ones. Okay. Cool. And so I want to pause right there. If you have any questions, you can ask them now, or we can go straight into Rick's demo. I will stop sharing. I was just thinking that was good that this meeting got pushed a week, because last week you should have heard me. It was just no voice.
Let me get the chat window up on my screen here so I can see some stuff coming in.
En deze is interessant, dus die wil ik wel even bij zijn.
Sorry, Gert, was that a question or maybe it came off?
Sorry about it.
No worries, I do that all the time. Years, 3+ years of Zoom, and I still do that from time to time. All right, there's a couple of questions. Okay, so I think I'll probably address Matthew's question here in a second when we kind of get into the meat of the demo, and we'll also touch on pricing, Matthew, and I think John. That's a great question. So we'll touch at that probably towards the end. So same thing here. I'm going to take you through a walkthrough of Cribl Lake. It's really going to be kind of a demo of all the products, because Cribl Lake is really kind of the first product in the Cribl portfolio that's really reaching out and kind of embedding itself, or I shouldn't say embedding itself, but integrating itself tightly with the different products in our product portfolio, specifically Stream and Search. And we can talk a little bit about what you're going to see come tomorrow with the initial release. And I think we maybe even have a slide, maybe. If not, we can find one just talking a little bit about roadmap and what's going to come for the remainder of the year. But as Felicia mentioned, so launching tomorrow is going to be the Cribl managed version of Cribl Lake. So what that means is if you're a Cribl Cloud customer, within your workspace in Cribl Cloud, you will have managed object storage through Cribl Lake. And the way that we work with things, or the way that we try to work with things is we try to think of things as you would in terms of data and data sets, rather than thinking about underlying raw infrastructure like buckets and how do I set up a bucket and organize it. So Cribl Lake is kind of one layer up or one layer kind of above that, where, you know, yes, there is a bucket, if you will. It's a different name if you're in Azure, but you've got some backing object storage. And within that object storage, you can then create data sets. And data sets, you'll want to create data sets to match the shape of data that you would like to store inside of Cribl Lake. So we ship with a couple of default ones. That's these ones all here at the top. The default ones are really just to kind of get you started, right? If you're wanting to kick the tires with Cribl Lake and see how it works, we've got some default data sets that are already set up for you. So you can, you know, just easily, hey, put some stuff here and let's see what happens. And then we've got some stuff, I'm going to show this one a little bit later, but we've got now inside of Cribl Cloud, we're actually storing metrics and logs for up to 30 days for you. So if you're in Cribl Cloud and you've been saying, hey, I want audit and access logs more than, you know, for longer than 24 hours, you know, Cribl Lake has got you covered there. I can show you what that looks like. But likely what you're going to do inside of your environments is you're going to create these data sets for specific purposes. So I have a Kubernetes cluster running in AWS. I actually have Cribl Edge inside of it, gathering logs from containers and metrics from containers, and then sending those to stream in my Cribl Cloud environment. And then Cribl Cloud's the one that saves it into the data set. We'll get into that in a second. But if you want to create your own data set, let's say you've got some audit logs that you're bringing in from a few different sources. Creating a data set is really easy. You know, give it a name, provide a description here so that, you know, people can understand what this data set is for. Systems, and then specify how long you want to keep it, right? So right now we've got it up to 5 years, but we're going to move that and extend this out to 10. But essentially, this retention period gives you complete control of how long you need to keep the data. So you might, for example, have some sort of compliance or regulatory needs. You need to keep this data around. Maybe it's debug logs and you want to support an application team and say, hey, you know what, logs from this test environment, you can keep them here and we can put the retention down to 10 days. You know, keep those low value logs, if you will, kind of out of, you know, your observability tools that are charging you a lot more for ingest and storing the data there. So complete control to handle different types of fields or different types of data. And the accelerated fields we'll touch on in a bit, but I want to create this audit log data set and I need to keep it around for 35 days. So clicking save creates the data set, the retention policy or lifecycle policy, depending on, you know, which object storage you're familiar with, will ensure that data that comes into that data set eventually gets aged out after 365 days. So now that you've created this data set, you know, how do you work with it? So with launch, obviously stream is going to be the way that you land the data in come tomorrow. So within one of your worker groups, what you're going to notice in your sources and your destinations are going to be these new tiles, specifically for Cribl Lake. So in my environment, I've already got the data sets that I've been working with. They're already created here as destinations. But at launch time, what you'll do is if you want to add, for example, that audit log into the lake, create a new destination. And what you'll notice here is that it's actually got the list of data sets for me automatically pulled in. And all I really need to do is just specify the data set that I want to save in with this destination, and then just click on save. And that's it. I don't have to worry about access keys, you know, trust permissions, roles, policies, IAM roles, trust policies, permission profiles, none of those things. Cribl Lake and Stream take care of that because Cribl Lake automatically, or Stream understands how to communicate with Cribl Lake securely. So you save that destination, and now it's going to become, and once you deploy it, you can start writing into it. And, you know, I'll save the actually going through the deployments, but you either have those options, right? Whether it's a data route or it's a quick connect, basically determining how you want to save data now is just a matter of essentially kind of, again, creating that data route, specifying how you want to filter the data. I'm just going to select something here that I had previously from a source that I've already had set up. And then you can determine what you want to do with that data on the way in to Cribl Lake. Now, you can take the data as is, you know, receive it from your source, just leave it that way and store it into Cribl Lake, and we'll see how what that looks like in a moment. Or you can run it through a pipeline. So if you've already created pipelines that are reducing data, potentially maybe enriching data, you can definitely do that. It's up to you, right? However that data comes in, it's going to basically be stored in that format that you commonly see when you're looking at live data in a source or a destination. And we'll see that here in a second. But then all I really need to do here in terms of the output is select that Cribl Lake destination, save that, deploy it, and I'll have data automatically coming in. So you can see here from my environment, I've already got a bunch of different types of data coming in. So I've got logs, right, which probably the majority of us work with, but I also have distributed traces. So this is coming from applications inside of that environment. And I'm also taking in metrics, so time series metrics. So Prometheus, these are Prometheus time series based metrics. All of those are landing inside of Cribl Lake. That gives me an optionality to do whatever I want with that data later on. But you can see here in my example, I've got another destination just below that where I'm actually sending metrics through to an observability tool. In this case, I'm using, I have a Grafana dashboard for these time series metrics. So the data, the destinations and data routes or quick connect are how you're going to get data inside of there. And then, of course, if you ever need to replay that, which I'll come back to, we have collectors for you here. Same thing, you can add these collectors yourself. Cribl Lake will automatically populate the actual data sets that you have available in Lake, so you can build out your collectors. Now, what we're hoping to do as kind of the interface for Cribl Lake matures is bring some of this work of creating the destinations and sources into the data set creation UI. So when you create a data set, for example, you can say, hey, you know what? I know I have these worker groups and I only want this data set to be accessible from these worker groups. So just trying to remove, you know, some extra clicks and steps. But where things get really cool in the integration that we're trying to achieve ultimately with Stream, you can see today inside of Search. So inside of Search, all of the data sets are immediately accessible to you. So if I, for example, go to pull up those metrics or those data sets that I created inside of Cribl Lake, you can see that they're already here. So again, I didn't have to do any sort of configuration here. Now, if you were trying to do this today on your own, you can do, you know, you can do a lot of this with Stream and Search. But what you're going to notice is that you're going to have to set up S3 destinations on your own, and you're going to have to copy over details from the AWS or Azure console and bring them back into Stream. And then you're going to need to do that for your collector. And then you're going to need to go into Search and do the same thing over. So with the integration with Cribl Lake, these logs automatically become available to you. Oh, all right, there we go. Okay, that was a weird authentication glitch. I'm in our staging environment, so I hope they didn't. Hang on, let me close some windows here and see if that's maybe. It's probably what the problem is I've got too many windows open. But bear with me here. The demo gods finally got angry with me. Oh, all right. So when we got this weird loop thing here, I'm going to just close that window and let's try and go back here. My apologies. Okay. Looks like we're okay. We're going to keep the fingers crossed that we can continue into search and look at this data. Okay. Yes. So far, so good. All right. Let's do a search here for my Kubernetes logs and just pull back the last 50 results from within the last hour. So, oh, that's really interesting. Okay. All right. Let me see if I can pull up an old search here with my results. Okay. That's weird. We'll have to troubleshoot it with the engineering team after the user group session. But this is the exact same search that I ran, but obviously it's a cached search result that I ran earlier. But the tight integration with Cribl Lake lets you kind of immediately query this data and start analyzing it. So the one thing with Cribl Lake that we wanted to kind of strive for was making it easy to get data in and then being able to very easily recall that data, whether that's searching the data or replaying it. And in order to make it easy, we made a choice that we weren't going to force people into a specific schema to store their data inside of Cribl Lake. So what that means is it gives you that flexibility to just take data and, again, do whatever you want with it. Modify it through the pipeline, do nothing with it, store it. But what you'll see here when the data lands inside of Cribl Lake is it's going to be in this Cribl format. And so the data is stored right now as compressed JSON files or JSON objects. And so when you go to use a tool like Search can read that in, it can look at the actual raw data field itself, and then it can, on query time, start pulling out fields and displaying fields and allowing you to do things like dive into search results. So you can, for example, say, hey, you know what? I want to take a look at a particular or logs coming from a particular node in a Kubernetes environment. You can easily do that with search because it gives you that flexibility with being able to, okay, so we won't do that. We won't do live searches, but it gives you that complete flexibility to look at that data. So that's the example search that I ran earlier. It allows you to kind of pull back that data and bring it out and start searching for that information. So you can see here I have these search results. I can really start kind of digging into it and start kind of pulling out some information that I want to. So that's a really kind of unique capability with search. But the here we go. What's really interesting is that, again, I can pull in information from different metrics type or different data types. So for example, here, this is showing me telemetry data coming from my application environment. So I have distributed trace information that's coming in. So this is kind of showing a different data type that we can actually go ahead and search on and give users or give end user teams access to via the lake. So this is just data coming. It's open telemetry. I'm sure everybody's probably heard that term at least once this week. It's a pretty popular buzzy term with application teams, especially teams kind of in the Kubernetes environment. So you've got a lot of flexibility around the data types that you want to put in there. And what gets really interesting with search and also with stream, if you allow me to jump back over to Cribl Lake for a second, is if you are saving data into the lake and you have an idea of how you want to access that data, we give you this option that we call accelerated fields. I'm going to look at it from the perspective of some time series metrics that I've got coming in. So think of an accelerated field like an index in a database. It's a key that I know I'm going to be searching on, or somebody that I'm going to give access to this data set to is going to be using to pull search information or replay information out of. So I've added a field here called environment. So basically into this data set, I have data coming from two environments, one, a development environment and a production environment. And so when you create these accelerated fields, it helps you in two ways. So if we go back to search, and we look at here we go. I'm just, again, going to pull up a metric, a search that I ran earlier. Having these accelerated fields gives me a couple benefits. So number one, this is a really interesting search query that I have here, where basically I can say, hey, all of this data set all of the data coming into this data set, show me in the last 5 minutes, how many events have come into that I've stored based on the environment. So you can see this breakdown between production and development. Where this gets really interesting from a recall perspective, we'll start with search and then we'll jump into stream, is that let's say, this data set here is, a 10 terabyte data set. And so you can see
Sorry for interrupting you, Rick.
No worries.
I was just saying hello. I didn't realize the size of the audience here.
Oh, okay. No problem. Thanks, Liam. Yeah, so you see that. So let's say I want to break things down now. I can actually do that by using this environment key, this environment key in one of my searches. So let's go and actually break it down and use this key now to run a search. So this accelerated field, again, going back to, let's say this is a 10 terabyte data set. If I filter down my search and say, hey, you know what? Only pull back information from this environment or pull back information where the events have this environment label of development, that can actually give me a faster search result because I don't have to scan all 10 terabytes. Cribl search, for example, knows exactly where to look for this data and pull it back out. So this is a really good way to improve query performance and so forth. But if you're going to do something like a replay, it also comes in handy in your replays because you can go into your collector, and inside of your collector, you can actually do runs, and then you can basically use our expression filter to do things like only pull back events within the last 5 minutes and replay them back into stream. So these accelerated fields, if you understand how you're going to use that data, are a great kind of capability to be able to just quickly pull back stuff. And so now you've got a couple different ways with Cribl Lake. If you're using stream to replay data out, when you do your full runs, you can now not only use time-based searches, but you can also use these keys. And Cribl Lake is going to basically know, hey, instead of going through, let's say I'm looking for the last hour, instead of having to scan everything from the last hour, it can say, hey, within the last hour, 4 events coming from this development environment, pull that data back for me. So that's kind of a really interesting capability that you have there. And so it's probably a good point for me to kind of take a breather. I know there's a lot of questions coming in, but in terms of kind of Cribl Lake, we're really kind of interested for those of you out there that are looking at a data lake strategy. What types of use cases are you envisioning for deploying a data lake, right? I think a compliance and a regulatory thing, keeping the data around for a certain period of time, is a very common use case. But curious to hear if there's other use cases, because we are seeing kind of the ability here now to kind of have a durable backing storage for data that you're potentially passing through stream, but also kind of a way to potentially share that data in different ways with other people inside your organizations. All right, so there's a couple of Felicia, thank you so much, I think, for answering some of the questions. Felicia, I don't know if you have one of those slides. I'll keep my thing up and let me know if you when we can flop over or switch over to the slides. We can kind of talk a little bit about pricing here, and then I can answer some of the questions. Okay, so there was a question, there was a few questions about how the data is stored, and I think this one actually, just pull this one back. This one kind of shows data the best, I think, and I also kind of addressed that. So number one is we do not, so we're not storing data in a specific format. So there was a couple questions I saw on the chat channel about OCSF. So OCSF is a schema, a recent, vendor neutral schema around security data. We have a lot of customers that are using Amazon Security Lake, which was kind of one of the first commercial solutions to put data inside of there. We have customers that are still doing that, and OCSF is a great schema, and ASL is a great tool for security data. But we've had conversations with those security teams, for example, saying, we have this data in this format, but we actually have other teams that would also like access to this data. But the OCSF schema isn't the greatest fit for us sharing that data to other teams, like to the application teams and so forth, because OCSF, if you've looked at it, there's not one schema, there's multiple schemas depending on the type of data that you're wanting to store in there. So we store the information right now. As I mentioned, these are compressed JSON files where we will store the event for you, or the raw event field for you. So the raw event, if you've been using Stream long enough, you'll know this is how the data came into Cribl, Stream. And then any data that gets extracted out into the event, at the time we write it out to Cribl Lake. So this data here was processed a little bit by Cribl Edge, and you can see here it's pulled out a lot of fields and made them a top level field for me inside of the event. So we store that information as is. Now, the benefit of that is later on in the future, we will open up access to be able to work with Cribl Lake from other tools outside of the Cribl suite. So what that means, you can see here, for example, here's a file. You could pull that file out. You could download this zipped file, and you can open it up and you can look at it with other tools. So when we add bring your own storage, for example, if you are using Cribl Lake to store the data in your bucket, you could use other tools outside of Cribl to be able to look at that data. You won't need any special binaries from us or anything like that to be able to access that. So that was a goal that we wanted to have is, it's your data. We don't want to lock you into a specific schema. We want it to be flexible for you, but we also want other tools to be able to use that data as we start improving kind of our integrations with products outside of the Cribl product suite. So a really great question there. So going back to the OCSF question, so these teams that we've been talking about, again, this is a different way of looking at the data, and it gives them some more optionality about, hey, we can send our data transformed a certain way and leave it in a security data lake because maybe we've built out some capabilities, or it's giving people the option as well to say, I can still send data downstream to my SIM tool, but maybe I don't need to archive as much data over there. So maybe I can reduce the amount of data that I archive in my SIM tool. Maybe I can take it down from 12 months to 6 or 3 months, and I can use something like Cribl Lake, which would allow me to store it for a year, maybe 2 years or 3 years, whatever my needs are. But again, I have a little bit more flexibility now because I can replay that data anytime that I want. And I can transform it on the way out very easily into different downstream tools. So, and then a few more questions here. So I see, where does the data go? Okay, so there's one question from Sergey is, where does the data go, and can we store it in our own environment? Which is a great question. So again, at launch time, the data is going to be stored within your Cribl cloud workspace. So all of this runs in AWS. So if you select, for example, US East 1 or US West 2, the object storage is inside of that workspace within that region. Later this year, we will be introducing the bring your own storage option. So that's going to give you a little bit more flexibility. So a good example there is with bring your own storage. Let's say you have workloads in multiple clouds, maybe AWS, maybe Azure. And so what you can do with bring your own storage is you can connect a object storage from AWS as well as object storage from Azure to Cribl Lake. And then what you can do within your stream worker groups is if you have worker groups in each of those environments, for example, just assume here that I had a worker group. This worker group here was running in AWS, and this worker group was running in Azure. I could set up destinations specifically for those worker groups to make sure that the data in Azure stays in Azure and the data in AWS stays in AWS. What is the benefit of that? Well, it saves you on costs, right? This is a common use case we're hearing from customers. Hey, it's great. We like the Cribl managed version, easy button. I don't have to worry about setting up a bucket, but I've got a lot of data that I would need to send from Azure into AWS. It makes it a little bit cost prohibitive for me because of the egress fees being so high. So bring your own storage will give you that flexibility to be able to do that for you. Yeah, so I think so a couple other questions here. Oh yes, I think let me search, let me get my history and see if I can pull up my previous search dashboards. Just because it was kind of being very interesting earlier. I'll let these run here. There was a question, so if I can find the right dashboard, bear with me, John. Let's see, I think that's the one here. Okay, so we'll pull these up. I'm hoping that I don't get that weird. Okay, we'll let these run because there was a question from John about Cribl audit logs that I was teasing about. And I'm pulling that data up and we'll see if we can show you what that looks like. So in terms of storing the data, yeah, actually, okay, Matthew's got a great question. If I understand your question, okay. So I'm reading the question from Matthew in the chat here about storing data in certain parsed formats, whether that be OCSF or CEF or LEAF. So again, the way that we're going to store the data, actually, it's probably the best way is probably just to do a live capture here on some data. So in terms of the format, so yeah, so this format here that you can kind of see in these events that have come through this particular destination, these are, this is kind of the Cribl event format. And so the Cribl event format is how we're storing data inside of the data lake. So to kind of simplify things, you won't, I guess to answer your question, Matthew, in the future, there won't be different options of like schema formats, or at least or the way we currently look at it, that you would use with Cribl Lake, where you would say, hey, I'm creating a data set and the format for the data set is storing the data in OCSF, or the format or the schema needs to be this. That's kind of not making that choice for you allows you, for example, if you wanted to enrich the data. So for example, you could take this data and in a pipeline, if you have a pipeline that converts data into an OCSF format to be able to save in an OCSF backend, you could take that data in that format and store it into Cribl Lake. So JSON is really just how we're storing the events in these compressed files. As this product matures, we're looking at different file formats that are vendor neutral that we can save the data in. That again gives you the flexibility to choose your own schema for any data set that you want, but also kind of compress and archive it, and again make it accessible to other tools without needing Cribl products. So yeah, so to answer that question, there is no specific format. You can shape the data however you want and store it in there. Did I answer that question, Matthew? And you can feel free to come off mute. Okay, all right, yeah, and if not, we can always take these questions into the chat channels. We can talk about that in a second. So at launch time, to put data into Cribl Lake, you will need a stream worker group in the cloud. That'll be kind of one of the requirements, but we are working on quickly adding support for hybrid worker groups and Edge, which will hopefully come out summertime this year, looking around the June timeframe. So if you have some hybrid workloads, if you have edge in some environments and you want those to be able to write to Cribl Lake, that's coming around the summertime. Later, by the end of this year, one of our goals is to provide what we call direct access to Cribl Lake, meaning you could use other tools besides Stream or Edge to save data into Cribl Lake for you. So again, you might have you might have kind of like a Fluent Bit agent or something. Thank you, a Fluent Bit agent or something like that, where you could actually save data into Cribl Lake in a different format. So you don't necessarily need Stream to be able to do that. Now, yeah, if I can, so this is kind of what our roadmap looks like. Don't worry about the internal only, don't share piece. We're sharing this now, that's okay. So this gives you an idea of like where support is going to be landing over the next little while. So again, later this year, we're looking to give direct access. And if you're interested in that, definitely let us know in the chat or in the community channel. And then data set acceleration is something that's coming too. If I can switch back for a second, because I teased about this earlier, and I'm going to kind of just show a dashboard I built. So one of the things we're doing in Cribl Cloud is we are saving access and audit logs from the leader, as well as metrics into Cribl Lake for 30 days. And so now you actually have a historical view of what's happening in your environment. Unfortunately, it looks like, let me just try and refresh some of these searches here. Yeah, it's so it looks like I'm having some issues kind of just with yeah, unfortunately with the environment. I'll try restoring this, but let's go into search here and let's see if we can pull in. Oh yeah, let's see. I may actually have it in my search history. Nope. Okay. All right. So yes. So again, to answer that question, so we are actually now storing those audit and access logs into a Cribl logs data set for you in the cloud or in Cribl Lake. So what this means, yeah, unfortunately, I apologize here for the. Yeah, it seems that some changes are happening on me in my production environment. It updates hourly on me. So I'm gonna, yeah, demo gods are having their fun with me here. So Cribl logs allow, so we have that data inside of there. Oh, there we go. Now it's starting to populate. Apologies. So what this means is you've got now access to audit and access logs inside of Cribl Lake. So you can actually start searching these things and have an understanding of what's happening. And if you go by data source, yeah, here it is. You can see here's where the logs are coming from. So you can see we have some audit data, 4 events in the last hour, but a lot of data coming from the access logs. So you now have an option to store this data. It's there for 30 days. You could replay it out if you needed to send it somewhere else, right? That gives you, you have that ability, but you can also do things like this. Okay, things are starting to come back. You can build dashboards, which is super, super cool. I thought this was an interesting kind of dashboard to build out. Very common thing that I hear from customers talking about Stream is like, hey, I'd like to be able to see the leaders, CPU usage and memory running in the cloud, but I'd also like to understand like what endpoints are people hitting, right? This is all the Cribl leader, the control management plane in the cloud. So these are the endpoints. I can see the IP addresses, the top talkers. So a very common kind of like access log breakdown. But what's really cool though is, again, I have access to the audit events coming from Cribl Cloud now. And so you can see I've got a dashboard built out here it's showing me what user has done, what action has a user taken in Cribl Cloud, and what specific thing that they're actually doing. And then to give you an example, here's this dashboard is pulling in the last 10 events. So this is there now for you in Cribl Cloud. Everybody can start searching and using this data. This dashboard we're looking to refine and make accessible. I'll try refreshing that. see if it comes back. But the audit and access log data is there. So that's a huge thing for us. We're excited about that. This is probably a very common request that we've heard from customers was to have this data available to them so that they could potentially send it downstream or do something like this, build some dashboards out of it. Yes. So again, coming back into the chat channel. So question from Dan. Yeah. So if you have a hybrid deployment, can we only send logs from our cloud worker groups now until this summer? The answer to that would be yes. So if you do have a hybrid deployment and you have some worker groups on-prem and you want to store data in the data lake, in Cribl Lake, what we're recommending customers do is inside of Stream is you can create a worker group in Stream that can a worker group that runs in cloud in Stream that can write data to Cribl Lake, and then from your worker groups, what you would do is you would use the Cribl TCP the Cribl TCP or HTTP options, which would allow you to transfer data from your hybrid worker groups to that worker group that's running in cloud that can save data into Cribl Lake. So so when you use Cribl HTTP or Cribl TCP, right, we don't count the data being transferred between the worker groups. So this allows you to use the hybrid worker groups to send your data to the cloud and being able to save that data into the lake. So hopefully, Dan, that answered your question. I see a question from Rick about public sharing area for dashboards that others create. This was something I was thinking about. Chris, I don't know if we actually have something today, but if not, that's probably a really good idea for us to kind of look into that. So Chris, we can take a note on that and potentially kind of get back to you on it. I'll check with the search team, but as you can see here, the format for the dashboards is all in JSON. So we should be able to export this, and we can get you a copy of that dashboard if you want to take a look at that data and see how it works. Aha, there we go. There's my other dashboard that I wanted to show you. This is a different data set. This is distributed trace data. It's a very simple one, but it's a very powerful one. It pulls in all of the traces. So think application performance monitoring, but it's pulled in, in the last 30 minutes, my demo application running in my production environment has generated 4,200 requests between different services. And so this is allowing me to see how many requests are happening within those last 30 minutes. Quite busy here, but then I can do some really cool things like start to give you the median and the P95 performance durations so that you can see, how long those search queries we're looking at. This is actually interesting. I've got some errors that are in there. Dashboards let you jump into, for example, search to go digging further and see what's going on. So let's for example, not search or let's not summarize this, but actually let's look at the raw events, and then you can actually start jumping into here and say, hey, okay, let's what's the breakdown by service? Okay. I'll start typing here, but yeah, you can see the type head. That's what I'm looking for. I can start breaking down errors by service. So this is kind of what's really kind of cool with search is the power to kind of interact with all of this data in so many different ways. All right, I'm gonna pause there, and then pricing, we answered it in the channel, but Felicia, if you're still on, if you've got that slide handy, we can share it. But let's talk about how pricing works. So at lunchtime, Cribl Managed is your option. So storing data inside of Cribl Lake, what we charge for that is going to be 0.05 credits per gigabyte, or 0.5 cents per gigabyte. for the amount of data stored inside of Cribl Lake. So that's compressed data. So if you're sending in, let's say a terabyte of data, and we compress that down quite a bit, you might be able to get that, let's say, down to half a terabyte or maybe 250 gigabytes, depending on the data and how large it is. You would basically be stored 0.05 cents per gigabyte for those 250 credits. So that would, and that's basically kind of all inclusive. So that's like back of the math, napkin math, that's maybe like $12, 12 credits for the month to store that data inside of Cribl Lake. There's no API operation fees or lifecycle fees or object fees or anything like that. It's just that one simple price to make it simple. Now, when we launched the bring your own storage capability, the price you'll see is lower. It's still credits are still drawn down monthly, but we will charge only 0.02 credits per gigabyte stored. Think of this as kind of a management fee, if you will, to kind of have that integration and flexibility of workflows that Cribl Lake provides you. You using your own storage would pay your cloud provider for the underlying storage, but then there's also additional fees. So API calls, to write the data to the lake, any calls for reading the data from the lake, and then lifecycle policies. There's usually another pricing line item with most cloud providers for that. So that would, so when you do the bring your own storage option, you would see that 0.2 cents a credit for the amount of data stored from Cribl, and then you would have those fees from your cloud provider. Again, the benefit of bring your own storage is one, the data is in your account. So we have a lot of customers out there where they have these requirements where they have to keep the data inside of their own accounts. This gives you that flexibility to do that. You would then be able to use your keys to be able to manage that data with bring your own storage. So today with Cribl managed, the fully managed option, data is encrypted at rest. So those keys are managed by the Cribl operations team, and the data is securely stored there. But again, later on, hopefully, maybe by the end of the year, maybe early next year, we will give you with the fully managed option, the ability to bring your own keys as well. So you could bring your own key and use that to encrypt the data in the fully managed version as well. So great news. So yes, Felicia answered it. So starting tomorrow, once your cloud environments are upgraded to version 4.6, everybody will have access to Cribl Lake. There's no need to request it from your account teams or anything like that. There's no need, as Felicia mentioned, no need for additional credits or things like that. Essentially, whatever credits you have in your Cribl cloud account, this will draw down on those credits. And then a few last questions, because I think we're on time, Chris. I can answer them quickly, and then we can also take some of these to the chat. In terms of storage tiers, right now, the fully managed option is in a standard tier. So that would be considered a hot tier. We are looking at, we will be looking at the ability to do intelligent tiering with the fully managed option. So meaning that as data gets older, we'll move it into different tiers within the AWS object storage to help reduce your cost for storing the data long-term. So that's coming. We won't have support for Iceberg in S3 in the near future, but Matthew, that's an interesting one. I'll try to connect with you offline to learn more about it. Iceberg is definitely a technology that we're looking at, and there will be more support for that coming soon in the Cribl products. And compression ratios from Chanda, last question. To be conservative, we've been guiding people around an 8:1 compression ratio. But again, depending on the data, it could be higher than that. We've seen some cases where the data, if it's like some JSON data where we can compress it down to like a 20:1 or even higher, like a 30:1. So it's very variable, but we are working on improving that. Obviously, as we make some more updates down in the future, you'll hear more about that. We're looking at different ways we can compress that data, which is just going to ultimately save you on costs. All right. I'm gonna shut up. Thank you so much,
Hey.
everybody. Time. I could go on all day.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, Felicia. Thanks, Felicia. Thanks, Rick and Felicia. I did the name, dual name for you to both there. That was cool. I'm going to wrap this up really quick. Remember, CriblCon is coming. Get registered today. Thanks all. If you have more questions, I just created a lake channel in community Slack. So we will be over there to answer some questions. Thanks so much. And we'll see you next month.